beautiful fall Monday morning. It is so wonderful to see all of you. Some of you are already members and active in the Athenaeum, and it's good to see your faces again. And some of you are new faces, and it's so wonderful to have you participating in this workshop. Back in, I'm Beth Hessel, by the way, the Executive Director of the Athenaeum. Back in 2016, I was the Executive Director of the Presbyterian Historical Society, and Nancy Taylor, who is now the Executive Director, let me know about a project that Carol Smith was trying to get started at Christ Church. And the two of them worked very hard over 2 application cycles on this project, the Digitizing Philadelphia's Historic Congregational Records Project through the Council on Library and Information Services Resources, a program that was funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. They had to go through several cycles of rewriting and resending the grant, but eventually it was accepted. And it's a fabulous project. For the past 2 years, the Athenaeum, working together with the Christ Church Project, with 11 historic congregations in Philadelphia, has been digitizing. Now it's about 70,000 documents and items related to these churches' history and their records. As a result, we have this growth of material that's available online for people to access in one place, to learn about what people were doing, how they were worshiping, who was worshiping where, what types of jobs they had, their families, all of this through rich church records. But they're all in 17th, 18th century handwriting. And that's where transcribers come in to transcribe these documents so that they are available online in a way that you don't have to be able to decipher old handwriting to be able to read. And so we're so excited. Carol and I had planned pre-pandemic to hold a workshop at the Athenaeum in our Bush room this past summer to do a week-long transcription workshop. The reality is we could not have held 38 people in our Bush room to do this. And so this is a blessing, actually, that we can all gather together online. So many more of you can participate. Some of you may have already had experience doing transcriptions, and for some, this may be something new that you're wanting to learn about and see if it's something you want to do. We're so glad you're here. And Carol is going to be leading this workshop with some of the other folk on staff who've been engaged in this process. And we hope that you will come back for all of the workshops and engage in this transcription process, and come by the Athenaeum if you haven't been, and come see the scanner that we've used to help digitize these, all of these items and learn more about the work. I would love to turn it over now to Carol, who has been the ringleader and cheerleader and driver of this project for so long. Carol.
Thanks, Beth, and thanks so much for making this possible, and thanks to all of you for showing up. I'm going to give you a little bit of background, introduce some other people that are a part of the project, and then we'll show you some of the virtual visuals of the congregations and the records, and tell you how to access the website. So William Penn's settlement of Philadelphia as a region where religious freedom prevailed led to the establishment of numerous faiths and beliefs. And you can see in this East Prospect view of the city of Philadelphia from the mid-18th century that even though Philadelphia was a small town, already you have church spires dotting the steeple. The city became an epicenter for political thought and action throughout the 18th century. As delegates to the Continental Congress and Constitutional Conventions debated and worshiped in Philadelphia, America became shaped through matters of church and state. Those congregations that formed within the city of brotherly love left records that reflect some of these extraordinary as well as ordinary times. At Christ Church, we recognize the significance of our records, not only to genealogists and liturgists, but to looking at the decision to cross out the prayers to the King in the Book of Common Prayer on July 4th, 1776. And soon after, the struggle to remove the bells from the steeple during the British occupation of the city. The Moravian church records, which sadly are not a part of this project, however, they give even more detailed information through the diaries that were left, that one of the wagons with the bells, notably the Liberty Bell, which was removed at the same time broke down on September 24th, 1777 in Bethlehem. Registers recorded the baptisms of not only of parishioners, but also of enslaved persons as well as free Negroes, and the burials of the Native American Indian chiefs in St. Peter's burial ground. We knew that other congregations no doubt offered similar troves of information. Since then, of course, we've all realized, and this seems like an eon ago already, but you remember the excavations on Arch Street of those graves that they found at the on Arch between 2nd and 3rd from the First Baptist Church that they all thought had been removed. Subsequently, Christ Church Preservation Trust, as Beth explained a little earlier, applied to the Council on Library and Information Resources for a Hidden Collections grant, which was awarded in the late fall of 2017 to digitize the records of the congregations you see listed here. This CLIR Hidden Collections grant is generously funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. We restricted our time period to those records created up to 1871. That way we didn't have to worry about privacy or copyright issues. In 2.5 years, Mike Seneca here at the Athenaeum has scanned more than 32,000 pages. And Walter Rice, our IT consultant, has created a website where these documents can be explored and now transcribed. Originally, the records of the Society of Friends were not a part of this project, and we were thrilled when Pat O'Donnell, now the Archivist Emeritus for the Peace Collection at Swarthmore, let us know they had come off of their ancestry contracts, and we could harvest those records as well. So we now have roughly 60,000 records online, and our current goal is to transcribe as many as we can to enhance searchability. We introduced our website to the public nearly 1.5 years ago at various scholarly and public events. Talking to audiences throughout the region to let them know these records were available, and frankly to enlist transcribers. Walt has developed a program whereby anyone can register for a password, start transcribing, and your work can be directly saved. American Revolution last summer. So I wanted to briefly introduce each of them to you, and before we actually tell you about the website, I wanted you all to be able to see the various records that we have. But maybe if Carly, Alan, and Walt would just like to say hello, that would be, and Mike, of course, that would be terrific.
Good morning, my name is Walt Rice. I'm the technology consultant for the project. And much of my work has been developing the website that you use and on working on the processes that get the images from time of scan to the point where they can be used by you. So I've had a lot of fun over the last 2.5 years and really enjoyed working with historic church records.
Alan, do you want to pick up?
Yes, my name is Alan Hasbrook. I'm a member of Christ Church, and I've been working with Carol for the better part of the last 20 years, I guess, transcribing the Christ Church records. A lot of them have already been done and posted online. Now, of course, we moved on to the larger project of the historic Philadelphia congregations. My role as one of the transcription people is more than anything else to offer people sympathy for having to wade through 18th century penmanship, which is sometimes pretty inscrutable. But with the advent of modern technology and the wonderful records that are online, they're very high digital scans, high resolution digital scans. They can be made larger, and that's just a wonderful antidote to the bad penmanship and the fading ink of the 18th century. So it's a doable, much more doable now than it was even 5 years ago. I'll be available for consultation. I'll tell you a little more tomorrow about the transcription aspect of it.
And Carly.
So as Carol mentioned, I'm the metadata project archivist for this project. But that basically means I'm dealing with data and reviewing everything and reviewing all the scans and pulling it all together so you have something in a sense to look at. Because if I wasn't reviewing the scans and something was wrong, everyone would be very confused looking at a scan. And for me, this project has been very interesting just because I haven't worked with church records much before this project. So it's enabled me to look at church records differently through a historical lens, which has been very enlightening to me.
Thanks. And of course, one of the key people in this whole project is Mike Seneca. Mike you turn it over to you.
I'm Mike Seneca. I'm the director of the Athenaeum's Imaging Center, and I'm the one who scanned all of these pages.
And I have to say, Mike rarely makes a mistake. So
I hope not.
it makes our jobs, especially Carly's job, so much easier. We thought you might like to see images of the churches and examples of some of the records that are going to be scanned. So Walt, if you want to put that up. Christ Church, of course, is the earliest of the Anglican churches to be established in Pennsylvania. And it's here that an earlier project that we undertook led to the development of this bigger project. The African Episcopal Church of St. Thomas was established in 1794, and it was an outgrowth of the Episcopal Church when Richard Allen and Absalom Jones broke away from the traditional religions and formed both Mother Bethel and St. Thomas's. Mikveh Israel, of course, has long been an integral part of the religions in the city of Philadelphia. You have here their early building and some of the later ones. They're now located on 4th Street between Market and Arch. St. Peter's was established as the sort of southern chapel of ease for Christ Church in 1760, but in 1832, the United Churches split, and St. Peter's from that point on has maintained its own records. Absolutely beautiful church at 3rd and Pine. And Old St. George's, the first of the United Methodist churches to be established. You can see here that it was directly impacted by the Benjamin Franklin Bridge, which had to curve a bit to avoid taking down the church. St. Paul's Church was established also in 1760 when the Reverend McClenahan, their minister, was a little too evangelical for some of the parishioners at Christ Church in St. Peter's. So they split off and established a church of their own, St. Paul's, with the direct proviso that the Reverend McClenahan be the minister. It's now a part of Episcopal Community Services. And the St. Paul's records are the only ones that are a part of this project of a congregation that is no longer active. Gloria Dei, of course, is the oldest church in our group. It's absolutely beautiful building down off of Columbus Boulevard, and we're so thrilled to have them as part of this project. They fell outside the city limits. You can see again the church right in the background there. They're a little bit outside the city limits of 1800, which is how we'd established our criteria for this project, but we couldn't imagine doing it without them. First Baptist Church, First Presbyterian. Now the Presbyterian records, and here you really have to peer to see the Second Presbyterian Church. The Presbyterian records are held by the Presbyterian Historical Society, as Beth mentioned a little bit earlier, even though the congregations are still active. First and Second Presbyterian have merged, but Third Presbyterian, of course, still stands on its own. And as I mentioned earlier, the Friends Meeting House records just came into the project, and we are just so delighted to have them as part of this effort. So what types of records were we scanning? The accounting records. Here you have the Christ Church pew rents. And you know, we love the baptismal, marriage, circumcision, and burial records because they tell us who celebrated life events here. But these pew rent records are the ones where you really get an idea of who was in the city on a consistent basis. These are the Vestry Minutes I referenced earlier, where the Vestry of Christ Church directed the minister and his assistants to cross out the prayers to the king in the books of common prayer. An act, to be honest, that was probably treasonous. The titular head of the church, of the Anglican Church, was the King of England. And when everyone else fled the city, the following year, Jacob Duché, the rector of Christ Church, was placed under house arrest. Here we have some of the records of the marriages, births, and deaths from Mikveh Israel. These are a little bit more challenging in that you'll see some Hebrew characters interspersed, maybe some Dutch and German, but if anyone is willing to take these on, they're a rich treasure trove. Here we have the Sexton's accounting records, and it's only really in the Sexton's accounting records of burials that we get the causes of death. Sadly, we don't have as many of these as we would wish. But what you'll see in these particular records, which thanks to one of our transcribers have been done, is the account of the deaths and burials of the Native American chiefs who came to visit President Washington on the state visit in 1793. And sadly died of smallpox before they could return home to their tribes. But interspersed with those were other accounts of stillborn deaths and consumption, fevers, etc. Here we have the minutes of St. Thomas's African Episcopal Church detailing the reactions of the vestry and their movement to mourn appropriately Octavius Catto, one of their fellow vestrymen, a prominent Philadelphia activist, scholar, and baseball player, amongst other things, who was struck down in 1871. We have been amazed at some of the things that have come out of the records, not least of which is the chattiness of some of them. These Baptist church records are really just remarkably detailed for their period, and you're not going to find this type of detail in church minutes today. Again, I think this may already be transcribed if anyone just wants to discover what happened in early congregations. It's worth looking at these records through our website just to get a better feel for the drama that occurs. Usually, these types of records, the registers, are pretty cut and dried. You get the idea that, you know, you have the name of the deceased, the date of the burial, the minister doing it, etc. But the Reverend Andrew Rudman of Gloria Dei was wonderfully detailed in his notes. And here we have Elizabeth Westmuller's burial records, who apparently died of a stomach disease. And it recounts the weather and everything else. Pew rent books, again, First Presbyterian Church. Great for telling us who's here all the time. Minutes are a big piece of this project because it's here that you really get the behind the scenes decision making. And charters, another really important component to the project. And here are examples of some of the records of the monthly meeting of Friends. The St. George's records are really interesting because they are also the section where you see a lot of the conference records. David Daly was the traveling missionary who had the Eastern Shore Circuit. And he leaves wonderful accounts of his travels, which sounded absolutely grim between the weather and the illness that he encountered, but just great to read. So these records, in addition to being visible on the website that Walt's going to be showing to you shortly, are also visible through the American Theological Library Association's digital portal. And this sets it out to a much broader population of scholars than we could hope to reach on our own. So we're absolutely thrilled with this partnership. And the long-term preservation of these records has been accepted by the University of Pennsylvania Special Collections Libraries. So again, you can see these records through OPEN, and you will be able to see them in perpetuity that way. We are already in the midst of doing transcription work, and every other week we hold a transcribers coffee hour to which you are all invited, and all we need is your email address to sign you up. And that's our overview. So Walt will now show you the site and how to navigate it.
Okay, good morning again, everyone. I'm just gonna take a second here to get my window shared. Okay, you should be looking at the homepage of the Philadelphia Congregation's Early Records website. The URL is easy, it's just philadelphiacongregations.org. And this takes you right into the records that we have worked to digitize and make available to you. One of the easiest ways to navigate this is by congregation. So up on the navigation bar up here, you see Browse by Congregation. And that will take you into a list of the participating congregations with a little bit of history about each one and the ability to dive into the records of a particular church. So if we want to look at the First Baptist Church records here, all we have to do is click this Browse Items, and it will take us into the items for First Baptist Church. You'll see some basic identifying information here. Some subjects, so you could click baptismal records to find all the baptismal records in our database. Same thing with marriage records here. You see a thumbnail of the first image of the item, along with transcription status down here. So it shows you that in these membership letters from 1783, 1 of 6 pages has been transcribed. And there's a fun link here that says help transcribe this work, and we'll look at that in a second. If you click on any of these, so I'm going to pull up the baptismal certificate here, you have a viewer at the top, and you can, I can't do it on the Zoom, but you can get a wonderful way to view it by clicking the full screen icon here, and that will take this viewer to full screen so that you can see the original documents as big as your monitor. If you have the chance, I know a lot of people use small laptops and tablets now. If you have the chance to use a desktop computer with a big monitor, these things are wonderful to look at. And if you find yourself a fancy iMac or a high-res monitor, you will see them in amazingly glorious detail. So it might be worth it to visit the Apple Store, for instance, and find one of their big screen computers and pull it up and take a look at some documents. You can zoom in on these, so you can just use the plus and minus here. You can move around. This one's pretty straightforward because it's mostly typeset, but you do have some text down here. This one was fun because when it was originally cataloged, it was cataloged for Sarah Fallows with an F, and it's been listed like that forever. But as I went through other baptism records, I noticed that it wasn't Fallows, it was Sallows. So I was able to come back here and correct that. In addition to the original image, if something's been transcribed, you have text down here that you can read the document. And especially if you've got hard to read text or stuff that's very light, that someone has spent time to go through it and transcribe it, makes this so much more readable and accessible. And one of the things we hope to do, generations coming up aren't learning cursive in school anymore. We want these documents to be accessible to them as well. So having this text, transcribed, the handwriting at least, makes a huge difference in making these resources available. If I look at the back here, I noticed this when I was getting ready for the demo. See letter of Louisa C. Aaron, April 28th, 1925. And I look at the transcription and it says, see letter of Louisa C. Aaron, April 28th, 2915. I think that's the wrong year, right? We're a millennia off here. So let's go in and fix it, right? So this is where help transcribe this resource can be handy. So you see this link anywhere there's a transcription, you see this link to help transcribe this resource. And when you click it, it takes you to the login page for the Phylogeohistory Network. This is the Athenaeum's infrastructure that really serves as the backing for this project. And these records aren't geographic history, but the Athenaeum really built out this system to support primarily its map collections and now other digitized resources for other institutions. So you see this geohistory login, and you can register right here, and it will give you a new username and password, or you can log in. And now you come to a slightly different view here, where you've got the viewer again, and now it takes a second to load, but the text, the transcription text, is below. And what we can do is we can go to the page, and I see where the mistake is. And this must have been me because it says it was last edited by me in 2019. So Carol, don't blame anybody else. This was my job. I can come in here and edit it, and it gives me, it just changes to an edit box. And now I can fix the date, 1925. And since this is a completed transcription of this page, I make sure the box is checked, transcription is complete. And then I click save. You really can start anywhere you want if you want to transcribe. You remember from the list of resources, you see this transcription status on each one. So you can look and see, oh, wait, nobody started that one yet. I can work on that one. So we could come into the marriage register, and we can click the help transcribe this resource. And again, it takes a moment to load because it's a lot of pages that it's working with. But when it comes up, it'll give me the links here to be able to edit the transcription for the different pages. So there's nothing on the front cover. Let's see what this says right here. So this is one hint for you. Sometimes it's hard to tell which side is which, so it works better if you switch to the single page mode, and then you know which one you're on, okay? So this is labeled title verso, and I can click edit there. And I have my box now, and I can start transcribing. Mr. Geo W. Burns, Wilmington D. Del. There we go. And Elizabeth Darling, Newcastle Del. One of the things that may seem odd when you're thinking of transcriptions is we're transcribing in plain text. So if there are things that are underlined, we don't have an indication for underline. If there are things that are bold or right justified or centered or whatever, really the focus here is on getting the text as it's written into a plain text format below. And this is something that we really took the lead from the Library of Congress on as they worked through thinking how text can be used with searching, with making things accessible to people who may be vision impaired. The kinds of formatting that might seem important when you're thinking of a page of text are less important when you're thinking of a transcript of that page. So we have a style guide, and you can see that up here at the top, there's transcription guidelines. And if you click that, it'll open a window that talks about all these different kind of conventions to follow. And I know in another session, Alan's going to talk about those. But just as you look at these, to realize that we're not trying to represent the formatting of the page so much as the content of the page, so that when we use these in different ways, whether it be for searching or for vocalization, for reading out loud, it's something that kind of reads as the original does, word by word, but as the original is written. So there may be things that you can kind of flesh out in terms of abbreviations. Delaware, for instance. But since the original says DEL, we type DEL. Okay? There are things that you might not be able to read, like, can anybody see what this word is here? Right, this is going to be a challenge here.
Ernest, like a first name.
Ernest Postley. 2 minutes. Isabel.
Dunham.
Mm-hmm.
In the night.
In the neighborhood
Uh,
of.
Three. That's 35. 352. 380.
Yep, it's a hard one, isn't it? 38, maybe? I see a.
I think there's a 2 as well.
So this is one where we might just have to put it in our brackets here. It's 3 something. So you do your best, right? And what happens here is the words we could recognize, Postley, Dunham, are going to come up when this document is searched in the future. And somebody who's like, whoa, Postley, that's one of my ancestors, can spend another half hour trying to figure out what this, right, what this reference says. And they can come in here as well and work on the transcription and complete it. So I've done all the text on this page the best I can read it. And I'm going to say transcription is complete and then save. And now this is in here for anybody who comes to the site next to view. There are some basic protections in place. You can't, if someone else is editing a transcription of a page, you can't go in and edit at the same time. And the reason for that is, you know, you don't want to save over each other's work and cause a chaos in the database here. So only one person at a time per page. If you accidentally close your browser and come back in, you'll be locked out for 15 minutes because it thinks you're a second person. But you can move on to the next page and keep going with that. But really, this is something that we've designed to be accessible to anyone. Mike just sent me a text here. He thinks this might be 3 shillings. So lots of ways to interpret this and to fill in the details. Okay? And it's just something we really invite you to step into, both to browse and look at the resources. This is amazingly dense. You've got indices here. You go into the main records themselves. You've got cases where they were reusing an account ledger as a marriage register. So they cross out the accounting information and they're using, you know, leftover space on the pages to fill this in. And it really just takes people who are fascinated by these and willing to dig into them and see, you know, this piece of history for what it is and to value it and to use it again. Any questions so far on the website or how to use it? we've really tried to make it user-friendly so that anybody can come in here really without instructions and recognize what they're looking at and move around. If at any time you do have questions or have difficulties, you can send us your question here on the Contact Us page. And when you go to log in to the transcription, there's also a section there for support that has my email address, so you can get in touch with me for that.
Walter,
Yes.
I just wanted to point out one of the things that I'm delighted about your work is the fact that early on in this project, we were not quite sure what kind of computer you needed to do for transcriptions, or what kind of software, what kind of word processor, and you've eliminated that entire issue. You can use any kind of computer. You don't need a word processor because it's all built right into the website. You might want to point that out and do a little more detail on that to reassure people that they can use virtually anything as long as they can access the web. Yep,
You can use just about anything. Our one recommendation is, if at all possible, use a bigger monitor. So, if you really get into this and you want to do transcription work and you have a laptop, maybe investing $100 in a bigger monitor to plug into your laptop will make that work so much more rewarding, to be able to see the document larger and not have to really juggle and scroll around to get to all the pieces. And I'm working on making that easier on smaller devices, but it's just really hard to be able to look at an original and the text you're typing at the same time on a small screen. So bigger the better for that. Okay.
So Walt, there's a couple of questions that have come up in the chat. One being, how are pages assigned? They are not assigned. And people are working independently, not in pairs. Ideally, we would have two different people reviewing a document, but given the quantity of these documents, our goal is simply to get this information out there. And also, in all honesty, the way Walt has designed this system, which is absolutely brilliant, is that when you're looking at the transcription, you're also seeing the original document. So as a researcher, if you have any doubts at all about the transcription you're reading, you can go to the original document and take a look at it. When you sign up for a document, and we're not assigning with you, we want you just to do something that's of great interest to you. So when you go to that particular document and you sign in on a transcription log, the project administrators can see what you're working on, so that if you do have questions, you can get back to us and we can easily go in and try to find where you're stumbling with things. Of course, we may be just as baffled as you are.
And some of that's the case with these original materials. But again, the transcription guidelines that are available to you at the top of any of the pages really provide a good intro into the different ways to think through what you're seeing and to transcribe it in the system. And again, we're really aiming to represent the original and to do so in a plain way that is usable in many different ways by different systems, and even in ways that we haven't contemplated yet to make these records more accessible.
And here's another comment in the chat from Carrie Bryant. I would like to know more about protections in place. Do you have to be vetted to have access to the site? I'm thinking of the Wild West that was the early days of Wikipedia and some of the stuff, in parentheses, wrong, that shows up on Find a Grave.
So right now there's no particular vetting. Our crowd is small in this crowdsourcing. And again, the administrators here can see who's transcribing and what they're working on. So we'll go through and just take a look at kind of the work that a transcriber is doing, provide feedback if necessary. And if we really need to, we can lock it down. But we've had a good intentioned group of folks who really share our love for these documents, who have worked their hardest to make them more accessible. And it does mean, like Wikipedia, the quality of some of the transcriptions may not be perfect, but it's something where even a beginning approach to it is better than nothing. right? Because it makes these documents findable and visible. So if somebody with, more experience or with particular knowledge of specific names, Sarah Fallows, for instance, I only know that because I found it somewhere else. And I'm like, oh, I know this person. She was in the list, and oh, it's the same date. So this has to be Sarah Sallows. So I can correct this here. So it's something where it may be a researcher years from now who comes back and is able to say, oh, wait, that one's misspelled. This is actually this. But because it was, it had a first run through by somebody who did their best to read what was there, it became visible and accessible to a much wider audience. Right now, the full text is not yet searchable. We're working with our partners at ATLA to build those pieces both on our site and in their site as well, so that these resources become, far more searchable in both instances. I'll show you real quick what this looks like on the ATLA site. So if you go to dl.atla.com, you can explore institutions, and here's St. Thomas. I was looking, oh, Baptist, right? American Baptist Historical Society. And here's First Baptist Church. So here are the same resources that are in our list on our website, and the same viewer. And as these things get transcribed, and we're working with ATLA to do this, they'll become searchable by those full text transcriptions, and that full text will be visible on this page as well. So the records that we do in Philadelphia become part of a much larger digital library of records that are being digitized across the country, many different kinds of records even. So these things begin to tie together in that kind of primary source history of American houses of worship, American congregations.
Walter?
Yes.
On the previous screen of I think it was the monthly meeting, 1773 Quaker meeting, there was a question in the chat area that I had too. Take a look at the strikeout, the Joseph Balance. In the transcription, that is struck through. We have a deletion tag, which we'll discuss on Wednesday, about how to use tags. But what's the correct way to indicate that deletion? Is it through using strikeout? And if so, how do you generate strikeout in the editor? Or is it through a deletion tag, the square bracket DE colon, and then whatever has been deleted on the original page?
So if you read the transcription guidelines, you'll see how to do this. And if we go into this resource, what page are we on here? Page 3. So if we edit this page transcription, you'll see that we use a special tag here to indicate text that has been struck out.
That was originally entered as a deletion tag, and then it's been kind of tokenized into strike-through text. Is that what happened?
So when you're doing the transcription, you're using these tags both to indicate things that are questionable, like to letters you don't understand or whole words you don't understand. And there's a couple special tags that you'll see in our guidelines that indicate a few more things, such as text that has been struck out. And so
how did you expose the original tag string as opposed to the strike-through, the tokenized version?
So when I'm looking at the page here, what I did was I clicked edit to see what the transcriber actually would have typed.
Ah, okay.
So because I'm here right now, I don't think anybody else could come to this page and look at it. But if you want to see, how something is done, just edit the page and you'll see the tag behind it.
Outstanding. That's very useful. Thank you.
It's just a DE tag there.
Well, there's another question in the chat where the person says, I see the download function and is this recommended? I think not, because then you can't hit this page. Am I right?
So if you want to use an image, so all of our images are freely accessible. They're all public domain, and that's part of the requirements from CLIR. You can use the download function in any of the viewers here to download the image. You can use it in, if you have a genealogy site or you're using Ancestry, feel free to take one of the pages here and put it in some other resource. And you've got, usually 2 resolutions here that you can download, a smaller one and a larger one. And this will give you a copy of the whole page. Again, this is tied to the viewer, so it's really going to give you what you're looking at in the viewer. And that's the same if you're in this transcription interface. Download's not going to give you the whole thing, but it will give you, what you're looking at on the screen, whether the whole image or just the cropped image there.
And as Walt pointed out, these records are freely available for anyone to use. So scholars can use them for their work. Family historians can use them. One of the reasons we really thought about moving forward in this direction is that so many people wanted to see the original baptismal, marriage, and burial records. Family history is probably the nation's biggest hobby after gardening. So it is something that is really important to lots of individuals. Another question here is that can a transcriber choose from the entire records of a church? You certainly can choose. I'm not going to limit anyone to what they transcribe.
Right.
This is something, we just want you to pick something that you're engaged with. Having said that, we did promise the Council on Library and Information Resources that we would try to focus on getting some of the baptismal, marriage, and burial registers transcribed, just because then it makes it much more accessible to many people. But feel free to pick any record that you find of interest. And our hope really is that between now and Wednesday, you'll explore this site, you'll register for a login, and you'll find a record and you'll play with it. I was saying to somebody, another group the other day, that this is kind of like a different version of jigsaw puzzles. You can just do it for entertainment, and you're doing something that will really benefit the entire historical community.
I don't know why the Biddles were disowned. That might be somewhere else in the records. This was in the chat. Does anyone know why the Biddles were disowned here?
No.
But knowing the friends, it may be something like joining the militia. It might be something related to a particular business transaction or something like that that really went against some of the core principles. You might get disowned for that kind of disagreement. Again, I don't know the time period that we're dealing with here. This is 1773, so that might be right up against that time where some of these things are happening.
And then there's another question, Walt, that came in about, are racial terms accessible by word search? And not at this point. Am I correct about that?
Not at this point, right?
Yeah. And is there an end to the transcription project? Presumably not. As long as the site stays up, you can transcribe. The project itself is supposed to end this December, but we were encouraged by CLIR early on to ask for a 1-year extension in the hope that we could expand our transcription efforts, and we will be doing that. So the project itself will technically end, I guess, on December 31st of 2021.
And the Athenaeum has committed to hosting for 10 years. But in my 20 years at the Athenaeum, we've never cut a project off. So we've got projects that are 20 years old and still going strong with their websites. So it's something where this is really something the Athenaeum is strong at, supporting smaller partners who have these amazing digitization projects and being able to be that resource hub for small archives. So things from the contribution ship insurance company that were scanned, records from the free library that still aren't available in their digital collections, and from Radnor Historical Society and the Frankfurt Historical Society, things that really flesh out an understanding of Philadelphia's history, but are from places that don't have, really don't have the resources to do this on their own. So the Regional Digital Imaging Center really provides that expertise that makes projects like this possible. And I think one of the seminar days, we're going to see the scanners, and if Mike's up for it, he can do it. If not, I'll come down and do it. And we can take the camera around and show you the scanners in action. So that's our plan.
So there's another question here, the best URL to log into and register. And that would be www.philadelphiacongregations.org.
Yep, that's the main website where you should come and start, is philadelphiacongregations.org.
And there's another question, will recordings of the workshop be available afterwards? And I don't know the answer to that. I know that we are recording, but perhaps Tess or Beth can answer that.
Yes, we're recording it.
And so can we share this with the larger list of registries?
Yes.
Great.
So this is a 4-day workshop. We have set it up in such a way that you can register for 1 day or all 4. Each day will cover a different topic. So for example, on Wednesday, we're going to be hearing from some folks that have been doing transcription work, the records that they've been working on. We have someone who's been working on accounting records, sermons, Vestry Minutes, and some of the registers and the Gloria Dei records. So you'll get a broader idea of some of the background here. And then Alan will be going over his transcription guidelines in greater detail. But in the meantime, if you're able to come back, I hope you'll pick a record and start to play with it so that you really can bring your questions with you. And then next week, we'll be focusing on the background, the technology pieces here, the scanning, the uploading, how it all comes together. And then on the last day, we've asked Bill Quigley, who is a scholar who's worked with some of the Benjamin Dorr sermons, to have a better understanding of the Civil War issues that impacted Christ Church, to come and talk about use of the records. And we'll be showing you some other examples of that as well. So we hope to see you for as many days as you can come. And please reach out to us if you have questions.
Carol, I have a housekeeping question, perhaps best directed to Beth. I have registered for the first 2 sessions, and I haven't yet registered for 3 and 4. Yet I have the sense that the meeting ID for Zoom is the same for all 4. Do I need to go ahead and register for the subsequent sessions? I do need
Yes.
to, yeah, so they'll change. Okay.
Yes, yes, you'll need to register for each one separately.
Will do.
It's how we how we maintain little security.
Understood. Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Alan. Yeah. So anybody who wants to attend, if you haven't registered for all of them, please go online and do that, and we'll make sure you get morning of. You'll get the link to the new that day's workshop.
Yeah. I have a question for Walt, I guess. When will this this particular session be up on the website and accessible?
I don't know. So I'm going to talk with Tess as soon as we're done.
Yeah.
And we'll get a copy of that recording and make it available.
I would really love to encourage our collections committee from the Athenaeum to be part of this. And if they could see this particular session and then hop on Wednesday, continue with it, it would be nice.
It'd be wonderful. Yep.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Yeah, Tess is the host of our Zoom program, so she has the recording, and she'll make sure, and she'll work with Walt to make sure it goes online, and it will be sent to everyone who registered as well.
Yeah, maybe I could get it and send it to the collections committee.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks,
This is
Penny.
great.
And ideally, we might be able to put it up on our news and updates tab as well, so that you'll be able to access it both ways.
Good.
So, and if you want to notice in the chat session, Tess included, just put up there again, the link to register for the transcription workshops. So if you need that link, it's right there. You can copy and paste that onto your web browser. And you will get the link the day of the session, I believe it is, Tess. Sometimes she sends them out the afternoon before. But that will come into your mailbox. What'd you say, Tess?
I'll probably send it twice just because what always happens is I'll send it and then more people register. So I have to send it again anyway. So just keep an eye out.
And if anybody asks you, we always get the emails from people or calls from people who say a friend registered when will they get it. So if you know of anyone else who registers, just tell them, don't worry. Tess is faithful about getting emailing the links to everyone. So just keep a look for it in your email. Are there further questions from anyone?
Thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry, Tess.
I just also threw a link in the chat for Beth is hosting an event for us tomorrow afternoon, if anyone is free, about our collection of Uncle Tom's Cabin books. So people might be interested in that as well.
Yes, thanks for that shout out. We have a number of copies of Harriet Beecher Stowe's, shoot, I have to take off my virtual background. So you can see these. There we go. Of Uncle Tom's Cabin and the notes to Uncle Tom, key to Uncle Tom's Cabin that Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote to help explain. It was sort of her footnotes to the novel and some other documents related to it that we have here in our collection. If you're interested in logging on, you can sign up for that on Eventbrite. It will be at noon tomorrow for 30 minutes. Jill Lee, our librarian, and I will be talking about this. This is just a way to start doing short programs in the afternoons for folks who want to learn a little bit more about what we have in our library and museum and archive collections. So hope you'll join us for that. Thank you all for joining here. We look forward to seeing you again on Wednesday morning. As Carol encouraged you, go online to philadelphiacongregations.org and sign up to get yourself a listed and enrolled as a transcriber, and maybe start exploring and finding a document that you want to start playing with for transcribing. We're so glad you're here and a part of this. Invite your friends to join if you think there are some people who might be, other people you know who might be interested in what to do during this pandemic.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you to the Athenaeum. What you're doing is very useful. Much appreciated.
We're thrilled to have you all here, and it's nice that this hard work is going to have so many more people helping make it available to a wider audience.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone, and we hope we'll see you Wednesday.